So you want to learn to paint in oils, but you don't know how to start. You don't know what you need to start, or maybe you have already started painting in oils, but you feel a little bit confused. You feel as if like you're lost. Okay, so today we're gonna be looking at the materials and how to save a buck, because it is important to start the right way and not to spend too much money and not to waste time. So let's look at the materials. Welcome back. Now let's talk about materials, okay? So first, before you look up materials, or before you get interested in painting, there are some basic things that you need to know, okay? And you don't need to be an expert in these topics, but you have to have enough knowledge before you touch paint. Otherwise, you're gonna be very, very frustrated. So first, what we need is an easy way to get there, okay? And the easy way to go is looking at the right materials, okay? So another thing that you need to know is what you want to paint. If you want to paint still life, portraits, I don't know, landscapes, you need to know what you want to paint before you buy your colors, okay? So in another video, I'm gonna talk about the different palettes and basic palettes. Right now it's just the basics for you to start. So the basic things that you need are drawing. Practice drawing. Drawing is very important. If you're learning to paint, if you want to learn to paint portraits, you need to draw a lot of faces first, okay? The second thing is color. You don't need to be an expert in color, but you need to have the basics, because later on I'm gonna give you some tips on color, okay? We're gonna have a tutorial on that. Another thing is value. Value is very important. You need to make some value studies, okay? If you're not good at value, it's very important that before you touch paint, to start learning to see value. Okay, another thing is perspective. You don't need to be a wizard of perspective, 1, 2, 3 point perspective. You just need the basics. So just grab a book or watch a tutorial on perspective. And another thing is aerial perspective, okay? If you're into landscape, you need to start learning about aerial perspective. We're gonna be touching on those topics in a later video. So let's talk about paint, okay? So here are my paints. These are the colors I use, and I put them in the order that I usually arrange them in my palette. The first color I'm gonna be talking about is burnt umber. This is an excellent color to start. I don't use it as much anymore. I will say why later in a later video, but this is a very important color to start. The next color I have, this is gonna be my complete palette, but later we're gonna talk about a simplified form. Then Terra Rosa. This is another earth color that I love. Terra Rosa is like a very opaque earth color out of the tube, and you can mix many things with it, okay? So it's a lovely color. The next one is burnt sienna. Burnt sienna, to me, is one of the basic colors on your palette. Some people use instead transparent iron oxide, which is a terrific color, is more transparent. Some others use transparent brown oxide. You can use those colors too. They're excellent. If I had the money, I would buy those instead, but I don't. So the next one is yellow ochre. Yellow ochre is a magnificent color. It's actually kind of opaque, a little bit transparent, kind of in the middle, you know, right in the middle. And it's when you mix it with white, it's pretty intense, okay? For next, my reds. I have two reds here. No, sorry. Before the reds, the yellows. I use Cadmium Yellow Light. I love this color. I use Graham-Bucker Cadmium Yellow Light. It may differ a little bit from brand to brand, okay? So you just gotta test them. But this is to me, is kind of like a primary yellow. Other people consider the cadmium yellow lemon the primary yellow, but I consider this one to be the one. You can use both, okay? These are excellent colors. Cadmium yellow lemon is actually a color which tends to the greens a little more, and this one is a little warmer, okay? So just whatever you need, have it on your palette, okay? The next colors are the reds. I use Cadmium Red Light or Cadmium Red, okay? And this is an excellent color for skin tones. And then we have Quinacridone Magenta. You can also find Quinacridone Rose or Alizarin Permanent Alizarin. Those are very similar colors, but I prefer the Quinacridone Magenta. This is a great color for mixing colors, okay? Then I have the Viridian Green. Excellent color to neutralize your paint, okay? And also, this is a bit transparent. And I have, this is a beautiful color, Cobalt Turquoise. Oh my God, this color and variations of this color are great. You cannot mix this color, you have to buy it, okay? And then we have Ultramarine Blue. This is, I've seen this color in so many painters' palette. I've watched so many videos, and Ultramarine Blue is the blue, okay? It's a little warmer or cooler depending on the science that you go for, but in my case, I would say it tends to reds rather than greens. I think it's easier to understand this way. And another color that I have here is Cobalt Blue or Cobalt Blue Deep. This is a very, I could say it's kind of like a primary blue. And then those are the colors I use. Of course, I use white. Titanium white is the one to go because it's easier to get, it's cheaper. But I actually would like to try the flake white or the, because that color is the one that the masters use, flake white, okay? And then two other colors. Raw Umber is a great color for sketching. I highly recommend this color. If you don't have it, you can use another earth color, okay? And then we have black. This black is Ivory black. I don't recommend to use it. I don't recommend using it by itself. I would say mix a little bit of the burnt umber or burnt sienna on it to warm it up a little because it tends to get a little bluer on the bluer side. Okay, so this is my complete palette, but what colors would I take off first? I would take off all of this. Let me take them off. We're gonna simplify our palette, and these are the colors that my basic palette, okay? Which would be burnt umber, burnt sienna, or transparent oxide red or transparent oxide brown, and then yellow ochre, your two yellows, your two reds, and your ultramarine blue. If you're in a budget, let's reduce this, okay? Let's make it smaller, okay? I would take off lemon yellow and either Quinacridone Magenta or Cadmium Red, but I would take first the Quinacridone Magenta because it's kind of expensive, okay? And also, you can live without it if you're working on portraits. Remember that you have to know, we're gonna be talking about different palettes in the future, okay? So it would be, this palette would be burnt umber, burnt sienna, yellow ochre, cadmium yellow light, cadmium red light or cadmium red, and ultramarine blue. If you need to take off another color, I would take off burnt umber, okay? So, and this is a basic palette. Of course, never take away the white. But this is a very basic palette, okay? I would start with this one. If you need to take one more color, I would take off this one or this one. either one, depending on the intensity of the yellow you want, which is yellow ochre or cadmium yellow light. So this is my very basic palette. Later on, we're gonna be talking about other basic palettes, limited palettes, okay? So, off with the color, let's talk about brushes. Okay, to be honest, you don't need a lot of brushes. You either need flats or you need filberts. I prefer filberts. Some people prefer flats. That's up to you. The brand I use is Rosemary. If it's not accessible in your country or in the area you are, so you can buy another brand. You can even start with very cheap colors. I've seen painters use very cheap brushes, but I would start with a detailing brush. And then, let me get my ruler. And then I would get at least, let's talk about synthetics. If you're gonna use synthetics, I would start with flats. I would use this one first, which is kind of less than a quarter, okay? A bit less than a quarter. This size is perfect. And then another one would be around a quarter. This is almost exactly like a quarter. And then the next size I would use is number 4, which is almost half an inch. It's like almost half an inch. You can, I think it's 3/8 or something like that. So that's what I would use to start. But also I'm gonna be making another video about brushes, okay? But to start, that's what I would need. These 3 brushes, the detailing brush and a big brush to cover a lot of ground. And it doesn't need to be real hair. It could be synthetic or it could be oxy or whatever. But if you need to start with synthetics, start with synthetics. I usually have always a combination on my palette, on my workstation. Now let's talk about my palette. You don't need to go fancy. Just get an old frame, put some gray paper behind it. That's it. You can seal it with some caulking if you want. And then you would get a spatula and you can clean it up really easy. When you're starting, I recommend a bigger one, even bigger than this one, because when you're learning to mix paint, it gets messy, okay? So later we're gonna cover that topic. And then, of course, you need like a cutter, some tape, some napkins, and of course, support. I usually buy canvas. I recommend canvas and just buy it like that, the roll, and cut it up into smaller pieces using your X-Acto knife or a cutter, whatever, okay? So now mediums. What I use, it's a solvent, odorless solvent, and oil, you know, linseed oil. Or I love walnut oil, but I use it only in special occasions because it's expensive. You can also buy liquid to speed up the process. We're gonna be talking about liquid later in another video, okay? And also you need some jars to clean up your brushes, okay? You need jars. You can get a jar like this and then put some wire in it, and that'll help you clean up the brushes. And then just a couple jars to put the odorless mineral spirits. Okay, so the brands for, well, let's talk about that later. Hold on. That's it. You need an easel. You don't really need an easel, but buy the cheapest you can find if you're starting. Some people even paint on a table, okay? Some illustrators use oils too. So before I go, let's talk about paint brands. I have Utrecht, I have Winsor Newton, I have some Graham. The colors may vary from brand to brand, but that doesn't necessarily worry me, okay? We're gonna be talking about those topics later. And but if that's not accessible, go to Winton. This is a good brand to start. It's cheap, but it's an okay quality to start. Now we're gonna be talking about how to go to the other levels. For example, if you get a cheap raw umber, let's say this is a cheap cheap burnt sienna, and then you buy like a big tube of the cheap one and a little tube of the fancy one or the expensive one, and you mix half of this with half of this, and you have like a medium quality paint. Okay, so that'll but only do that when you're making progress. Okay, as you're making progress, you wanna start adding more expensive colors little by little. Okay, remember the colors I told you. The first color, we're gonna be covering that, the first colors I would buy. Okay, so I hope you liked the video. If you liked it, if you have questions, write them down below in the comment section. Click the like button, subscribe, and please follow me in my social media. Okay, now if you have more questions, I will be answering them with videos, with tutorials, and I guess, you know, happy brushstrokes, keep painting, see you later.